Function with Purpose Podcast. All things health, wellness, fitness, and education through the physical therapy perspective. I am Dr. Amy Bullock, owner and founder of Fortress Physical Therapy. Fortress PT is here to serve the Charlotte metro area by highlighting the importance of how and why physical therapy should be a part of your health and wellness lifestyle. Here we go. Welcome to Season 10, Episode 4 of the Function with Purpose podcast. Thank you for joining in. Dr. Amy here with you guys today. Welcome. If you're new to the podcast, thank you. Definitely give me a follow. I would appreciate it. Free content. I like doing this. I don't get paid to do this. I'm just literally carving out time in my day trying to put out educational material to the public in order to help reshape your mindset on how and why physical therapy can and should be a part of your lifestyle. Because when it comes down to it, there will be, I'm going to vouch for this because as a profession, we need to shift. We need to shift forward that physical therapy can be primary care. Or direct access to primary care. We are part of a healthcare team. Anywho, that was my little spiel. That's going to be another topic probably for a podcast someday. So today's topic, we're going to get right to it. Returning to what heals. So this is going to be a personal story as well as actually an interaction I just had this morning with a patient. And really, when it comes down to it, it's our routine and our habits that help reshape our future self for the better, right? And sometimes we can fall back into old habits, but in this case, we're going to encompass around the human body. So, a lot of us, many of us probably have experienced some type of pain or discomfort in our life. Perhaps it's from an actual injury playing sports, or maybe you're a person who sits at their desk all day and they sit in the chair at a 90-degree angle at your hip, a 90-degree angle at your knee, and a 90-degree angle at your ankle, and you're in front of the computer all day, and you're just in this literally chair posture for like almost 8 hours straight. And the only time you leave that chair posture is getting up, going to the restroom, or perhaps taking a lunch break, or mini breaks throughout the day. So in this case, I'm going to tell you a story about myself. So the past 2.5 years, I have been recovering from an Achilles tendinopathy, tendonitis, and it originally started out as tendonitis. It kind of flared up, and then, I was instilling some practices that I would hypothetically give a patient, and I wasn't patient enough. I didn't spend enough time or the appropriate amount of time that I needed in a heel lift in order for my Achilles tendon, that really end portion that inserts on the bottom of the heel or the calcaneus. I didn't give it enough time using those heel lifts in order for the fire to be put out. So I was in and out of physiotherapy. I reached out to a colleague here locally in Charlotte, Dr. Jordan Berry, and literally I saw him for a full year. Like one time a month, he would provide me with some homework, and there were moments where it just felt like my ankle was stiff and it needed to be popped or cracked. And then there were other moments where it felt nervy, kind of nerve discomfort, nerve pain going into the toes. It felt like my nerve was stuck and it just felt like gooey, sticky. Then, of course my Achilles is what it was. It was, still pretty hot per se. Symptoms were there. They were kind of getting better and then going back to baseline. Then they were getting worse. Then they were getting better and going back to baseline. But at our last visit, literally, it was right before the Open in 2023, the CrossFit Open of 2023, which was in February 2023. Dr. Barry and I were like, listen, what are we missing? What were the missing points? Well, we decided at the end to place myself in heel lifts at all times 24/7, with the exception of sleeping. But anytime I was up, awake, walking around, doing my job duties, he and I both agreed, listen, you need to put those heel lifts in. You can't wear slippers. You can't wear sandals. If you're outside walking, you have to wear shoes. No sandals, no barefoot. So I was like, yes, done. So fast forward about 6 or 7 months in heel lifts, pretty much every day, things have slightly improved. I'm like, this is not slightly, actually significantly improved. Okay, all right, Achilles is feeling better. Starting to wean myself out of them over the next 7 months after being in the heel lifts for 7 months. However, there was a repercussion of purposely putting myself in these heel lifts. It was causing things in pain and discomfort to happen elsewhere in my body, which promoted that to happen in my front thigh muscles or my quad muscles, as well as the front aspect of my hips, which actually our glute muscles wrap around the front. Because you can probably feel in yourself your hip bones that are right in the front, as if you were putting your hands on your waist, like Superman when he would pose and put out his chest, his hands would be on his belt waist. Those bones in the front, right behind that, your deep glute muscles wrap around to that area. And then there's some other muscles too. But not only was I experiencing pain and discomfort muscular-wise because of the heel lifts in my quads and front glute muscles, however, it was jacking up my sleep. Oh my gosh. I cannot tell you. I'm not joking you. Probably every night, my legs were like just aching, pain, all the way down. Sometimes I would get like referred pain into my mid-shin and down into my foot. But most of it was muscular. I could tell, I could feel, I know it was muscular. It wasn't coming from my spine because I was using these heel lifts daily. So it became this, I'm getting to my point of my kind of story, returning to what heals. So after 7 months in this heel lift, both feet, because you don't want to wear one heel lift in one shoe and the other not, and then be kind of all jacked up, then I would have had back pain, real bad back pain. After 7 months in heel lifts, I was strategically lessening my time using the heel lifts. So I was spending some time outside of not wearing heel lifts, and it started like an hour out of my day. And then slowly kind of gravitated towards 2 hours, 3 hours, etc., until a full work day without using them. And then that carried over to my training and exercise, which at that moment in time, jump roping, running, and bounding, or like box jumps, aggravated it. So that plyometric work. So I had to be very, very, very diligent on when to incorporate the use of my heel lifts and when not to incorporate. I can say right now, at this moment in time, let's see, this podcast will probably come out, this summer of 2024. This moment in time, I am pretty much pain-free in my Achilles, except for somewhat double unders. So that's where I am right now. I'm trying to get out of not wearing my heel lifts when there is a high volume of double unders. So high volume in my eyes is 200 double unders or higher. So as the first 7 months I kind of spent in my heel lifts and then getting myself out of it over the next 7 months, I gradually, and it has been very slow, gradually have experienced lesser pain in my quad muscles and front glute muscles, which then in turn I have been able to sleep with maybe more discomfort, not necessarily a lot of pain. So, but this past December 2023, I did a fun little online competition, and I actually strained my front tensor fascia lata muscle, which is part of what we call the IT band that runs on the outside of the leg. And I was performing a 95-pound power snatch, and when I was already under fatigue, and when I went to pull, I think it was like my second or third rep, I felt my right hip just seize up, immediate sharp pain. So let's just say the first portion of the new year I've been dealing with that. And I can tell it is specifically in my tensor fascia lata muscle, because when I rotate it and touch it, it's paining. And so there was a setback. There was a setback during this, and I was experiencing pain during sleep again. Couldn't sleep on my sides. Found myself sleeping on my back all the time. So throughout this literally 1-year journey of using heel lifts, getting out of it, feeling better, my Achilles is feeling great, and then something else jacks up in my body, I've come to terms that this returning to what heals mindset starting to kick in. So when I strained my tensor fascia lata on my right hip, I kind of had to just, I still exercised, I still trained around my issue, but I had to return to what heals. So at that moment, I wasn't doing my due diligence, performing a mobility routine or a stretching routine, holding prolonged end range positions during my cool down after exercise. And then even on my active recovery days, I wasn't stretching. I wasn't doing any of my own foam rolling soft tissue work to my back, to my glutes, to my thighs. So I really had to come to Jesus with myself, come to Jesus terms that, listen, Amy, the CrossFit Open is coming in 2024, and you need to get your crap together. So what would you do if you were a patient of yours? What would you tell your patient? Well, I would tell and educate my patient, we need to return to what heals. We need to get back down to the nitty-gritty to help you experience pain-free sleep, to help you improve movement throughout your day, to help you improve end range motion and mobility without pain and stiffness and that sensation of just feeling stuck and gooey. Because I spend all of my day standing. So I'm in this upright posture as opposed to perhaps most of the United States in a sitting posture. So when I actually get down and squat, it's painful for me. It's painful when I try to stretch and bend over and stretch my hamstrings because I'm standing all day. So my capability to flex into full range of motion, i.e. full squatting to the ground, was not fun for me. So I was actually avoiding those things. So I said, that's it. I have to return to what heals. So what did I do? I recall from the past when I was instilling those movement practices, the mobility or end range stretching, the decompression over the foam roller at night, the elevating my feet in the evening before I go to bed, the soft tissue work using the foam roller or my mobilization wedge that I have. to start doing that because my back muscles started to tighten. So everything, it definitely feels muscular in nature. But I knew that, okay, I got to start instilling these minimal bouts of dosing into my weekly and daily routine. So I would spend time sitting in a squat. My back would be against the wall, and I would just fully squat to the ground where my heels would touch my butt. Therefore, the back of my thighs and my calf muscles would touch each other. So spending more time in the flexed position, i.e. squat, right? Because I stand all day. So I started doing that a little more. I also have started more soft tissue work, just decompressing over the foam roller, and then doing some soft tissue rolling on the foam roller into my back, my hamstring muscles, my glute muscles, my booty muscles. And then one of the big things is, as I'm a firm believer in, for those of you who are actual patients of mine and still continue to see me or have seen me, I have been dry needling, especially my right hip, because I strained it. I strained that TFL muscle in December. I've been doing specific pinpoint dry needling, electro dry needling to myself on that front hip muscle. And that has been a game changer to really tap into that painful area. It's not comfortable, but once the needles are in there, it's tolerable. But I knew that's what I needed, because when something like this happened in the past, I knew that I'm a good responder to dry needling, and just instilling that one time a week has helped tremendously. So those are some movement things, as well as a little bit of a passive therapy approach that I recall in the past when my body's kind of feeling like poo-poo. I have to kind of do the non-sexy things and start instilling those practices a little bit better. I think another thing too is, yes, just on the flip side, perhaps maybe you have a story that's similar to what I just told you guys over the past 15 minutes and what I just shared with you. Perhaps you're someone who maybe went through a spinal surgery and you had what we call a laminectomy, where they take a piece of your bone and they kind of shave it off to give your spinal canal some room to breathe, essentially. So it takes pressure off the nerve, and then therefore your nerve in that portion of your back can move around freely, and you don't experience those painful signals going into your leg or your foot anymore. But you're not fully healed. You go to physical therapy, you learn some things, and then you try to get back into the fitness world, and you're basically starting from scratch. But I think that along the way, this particularly a patient of mine comes to mind, using her as an example. So she had spinal surgery and had a laminectomy or a discectomy, and this was like maybe 7 years ago or so. I think a big thing, her and I were talking about this actually today, not only, movement and some stretching routines and then some fitness on top of trying to return to what heals, but I think two big components, actually, well, 3, 4, gosh, who knows? I'll just keep stacking them, is one of the biggest things I think for movement is walking. So in this patient's case, and even in mine, I can vouch for it too, daily walking, or at least accumulating 200 minutes per week of just walking, trying to strive for 8,000 steps a day or as close to it, or maybe 10,000 steps. Instill that day after day after day after day in order to train your nervous system that this is something that your body needs. So that is part of the healing process. And I think another major thing that people can poo-poo on, that we can obviously simply overlook because stress affects it. Of course, any pain or discomfort affects it. Our reactions affect it. Our nutrition affect it. Our daily schedules affect it. The people we interact with affect it. The timing affects it. I think the biggest thing on top of whatever I just discussed is circadian rhythm, or your sleep-wake cycle. Sleep pattern practices. Sleep. Think of this. Returning to what heals. It is so important for our body to receive and experience consistent sleep every night. Somewhere between 6 and 8, 9 hours. But also instilling some practices that when you do wake up, you get exposure to that morning sky, when the sun's coming up. As well as getting exposure at some point at midday, and then getting outside exposure at some point in the evening night sky, where the sun is setting and you see a lot of the beautiful colors of the sky, right? The blues, the dark oranges, pink, purple. I think the 2 or 3 major things is not only instilling your habit routine back in, right? Your stretching, your fitness, your mobility, your decompression, trying to hone in and calm your nervous system. But I think the other big 2 is sleep, really honing in on your pattern and refining that, and daily walking, which then entails both of those, getting your morning exposure of the sun midday, and then the evening when the sun's setting. I think that obviously makes the biggest impact in order to return to what heals. But in general, we're not perfect. We slip away from our habits. But then that's when things start creeping back up. That little shoulder niggle, or in my case, my quad pain and my front glute pain. My back gets stiff. Right? Because I'm not doing what I was in the past that was helping me heal, I kind of slipped away. So now I need to figure out what is the most minimal effective dose in order to help me produce a better baseline so I can feel and move better. Returning to what heals again. Recalling my previous habits that made me feel better and more robust. To go back to the basics. To relearn those memories and those effects again, because I felt good. I knew what made me feel good. So it's time to bring those little habits back to the forefront, so that when I'm squatting, I don't feel like a super old 80, 90-year-old joint where I feel like I need like some oil squeezed in there. But that my tissue is pliable. My body feels good when I move, or when I demonstrate a movement when I'm coaching the CrossFit class, or if I'm working with a patient and have to get on the floor with them and do a specific movement or set them up in a certain position when they're performing, I don't know, a kettlebell Turkish get-up, by the way, which is my favorite movement of all time. But realizing and understanding how the body feels when you're doing these fantastic, great habits. So that way, when something happens or a setback happens, or you, unfortunately, like me, experience literally some type of musculoskeletal pain for a full year, that trying to decipher and figure out which practices I need to instill daily in my routine, to do them consistently, to refine them, the sleep especially, and then I know the movement and some soft tissue work, dry needling. I'm already exercising. When I do get back into squatting more and more heavy, I know my tissue tolerance or my tissue capacity is starting to handle it. It's feeling better. So figuring out and returning to what heals, what makes you feel healthy. Sometimes it's right under your nose, all right? And sleep is a big one. Sleep. So one key thing to touch on was sleep. So our bodies are amazing machines, and think of this: when we have the flu or we get sick, what do we usually do? We sleep it off. We sleep and rest, because our body has to work very, very, very hard internally. We have all these chemical reactions that are going on. Our nervous system's ramped up internally, right? Our resting heart rate's probably a little bit higher. Our nervous system is just really trying to fight something off that shouldn't be in our body. So it's telling us to go to bed, sleep, and rest, because that is when I can return to what heals. Sleeping. Sleeping is such a powerful prescription or pill that we cannot overlook, no matter what we're experiencing. I think sleep is the number one thing. And then you slowly reinstill some mini practices that have helped in the past. But sleep, oh yeah, number one, right? So think about that, right? When you're sick, what do? You sleep, you rest. And then your body starts waking up and realizing, okay, I'm starting to feel better. I need to get some movement in. Okay, all right, let's go. So, yeah, take that. Thanks for hanging in there. Oh my gosh, returning to what heals. It has been quite the journey for myself, and we, I think, are over the hump, but man, patience is hard. Patience is so hard. But yeah, now it's trying to build tissue capacity, and I still here and there get some painful sleeps, but I'm able to tolerate laying on my side better. My hip is feeling better. So let's keep this ball rolling. So learning to return to what heals, returning to what heals for you specifically. And understanding that, number one, truthfully, sleep, I think, is going to be the king or queen that we need to get back to and refine. And then those mini practices that perhaps your healthcare provider or physiotherapist specifically have helped you in the past with for that specific issue. That's a wrap for today's episode, Function with Purpose podcast. For more information on this episode, please check out the show notes within your podcast app. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, or drop your comments and questions below. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Thanks for the listen. Pursuit, precision, purpose.